Kelly comes from Nashua. She has a very supportive husband, Joe, and 2 beautiful kids. Joe's a small businessman, and Kelly works very hard to allow small business to succeed in this country down in Washington, to stand up for all of us for our individual freedoms. She's a real inspiration to everybody that sees her because of all the things she's done for the state in a very short period of time. It is with great pleasure I introduce my good friend, Senator Kelly Ayotte.
First of all, I see so many friends in this room, and I am thrilled to see all of you, to be here with you, and of course to be in my home city of Nashua. And if you haven't eaten at Norton's, eat here because the food's excellent. And I'm really glad to be here. And I'm so honored to have been introduced by my friend, Craig Benson. Those of you may have heard me say this before, but he appointed me Attorney General of the state. I had the privilege of working with him. I feel there are certain people that come in your life that are responsible for what you've been able to achieve. And in my world, I count Craig Benson among them because he was a great leader of this state. I think he's a great friend, and I've always appreciated everything that you've done for me and your support, Craig, and your belief in me. Early on, I think Craig saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, so I'm appreciative of that. And likewise, I have 2 other great friends over here. Ray Wieczorek. When I served as Attorney General of the state, I saw day in, day out, how hard Ray Wieczorek worked on that council for the people of this state. Now, each contract that came before the council, he would look at it and say, is this fiscally responsible for our state? Is this the right thing to do? And what a great public servant we have in Ray Wieczorek. And Ray, I am honored to call you my friend. I want to thank you for all the support you have given me, not only when I was Attorney General, but in the United States Senate, for everything that you've done for our state. And last but not least is Governor Steve Merrill, who was the chairman of my Senate campaign. So it's wonderful to have Governor Merrill here. Governor Merrill has been a true mentor to me. He also was a tremendous leader of our state. He's really a role model, someone of such great character and integrity. So I thank you for your support of me, chairing my campaign, and everything that you've done. Today, what brings me here today? I'm here today to proudly endorse my friend, Scott Brown, for the United States Senate. I had the chance to get to know Scott when he served in Washington. He's a patriot who cares deeply about this country. He has devoted his life to public service. He spent decades serving in the Army National Guard. Obviously, he served at the state, the local level, the federal level. This is a team right here. Scott and Gail, his 2 daughters, an amazing family. This is a team that's devoted to this country and people that we would have proud to represent us in the United States Senate and to represent the state of New York. Talked about time and time and again. We've talked about the fact when I ran for the United States Senate, I ran because Washington is broken. It's still broken. I'm fighting that fight every day on your behalf. And please send me a teammate in Scott Brown that can fight against what we're seeing happening in Washington. What we see happening in Washington with the fiscal state of this country, he understands Governor Mel Thompson's message. Remember that message? That low taxes are the result of low spending. And he will help me in this fight in Washington that we've continued to fight for fiscal responsibility, for balanced budgets, the things that we all know make sense at home the kind of values that we need to bring to Washington so that my children, who are now 9 and 6, it's hard to believe, your children, our grandchildren, all of us in this room can make sure that we can keep that promise about the American dream. Because that's what's at stake right now. And that's why this election is so important for this country. He also appreciates, as Governor Benson mentioned, I come from a small business family. My husband would be here today, but he's working so hard right now in his own small business, landscaping and snow plowing, and he's up to his ears in dirt today. But what he would want me to tell all of you is that please get the federal government out of the way of our businesses. Let our businesses create jobs. I know that Scott Brown understands this, that he'll fight hard for our hardworking men and women in the state of New Hampshire, those small businesses that are struggling every day, and they're struggling because there just keeps coming more burdens from Washington that are making it harder for them to create jobs. And I know that Scott will be with me to cut through the red tape, to let our businesses and our business owners and our entrepreneurs do what they do best, and that's create good paying jobs in this country. And finally, let's not forget Obamacare. Scott understands, and he has stood against Obamacare. He has stood against Obamacare, which is hurting New Hampshire right now. It's hurting New Hampshire families. Obamacare is hurting New Hampshire businesses, and he will vote to repeal and replace Obamacare with making sure that we don't have a government, Washington-centered solution to the problems and the prices and the costs we see in healthcare. And if you want to remember one thing in this election and why it matters, we are still fighting the consequences of Obamacare. Ask those families in our state that have written me, who have told me that they lost their health care plan, that their hospital's not in the exchange, that the doctor that they've had a relationship with they no longer can keep because they've been put on that exchange, and Obamacare, the consequences of Obamacare here in New Hampshire, it's not been good for our state. And we need Scott Brown to help me to repeal Obamacare and replace it with some common sense policies for this country. Finally, as you look at the history here, in 2010, Scott Brown became the 41st Republican vote to prevent Harry Reid from having a filibuster-proof majority. Well, guess what we can do here in this election? In 2014, we can elect Scott Brown, and we can put Harry Reid in the minority. My friends, let me tell you how important this is for the country, to have new leadership in the United States Senate. The Senate has gone, as I've said before, from the most deliberative body in the world to the my way or the highway body. The people of this state elected me to serve on their behalf, to represent their viewpoints in shaping legislation in the United States Senate. But the way that Harry Reid runs the Senate, it doesn't matter if you have a good idea, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. You can't get a vote on it on behalf of your constituents. And so this is fundamental to our democracy, and it is one of the reasons this election becomes so important, so that we can ensure that Harry Reid is no longer running the Senate in a way that is contrary to our Constitution and democracy, and making sure that New Hampshire's voice is heard in the United States Senate. Finally, I know Scott can get things done. He's got a proven record of breaking through partisanship to get things done for this country. I got to work with him. We served on the Senate Armed Services Committee together, so I know how hard he will work for people in this state. I know his work ethic. I know his heart. It'll be in the right place for our state. we got to work together on 2 pieces of legislation. One was no contracting with the enemy, which we got passed. And Scott came up with the idea, pretty straightforward, common sense idea. How about we make sure that the money we're sending overseas to Afghanistan doesn't get in the hands of our enemies? Seems pretty common sense, right? Well, guess what? It wasn't happening. It wasn't happening because the bureaucracy